switch vendors need to jump on the open source and/or white box train to stay relevant in the future?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to say no. I don't think they do. I think they probably should, but they've got enough momentum, especially the 800-pound gorilla, that they can just keep stamping out the same branded switches for the next 10, 15 years, and the people who only buy Cisco are just going to keep buying Cisco.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that some nuance here, and one, it's market dependent to some degree. So if you talk to Cisco about iOS XR, they've done a bunch of podcasts with us on iOS XR this year. If you, for the audience, you've probably picked up on some of those. And one of the things they've talked about is, yeah, you can put iOS XR on a white box now. Now it's case by case. They're working with individual customers to make sure that iOS XR is going to work correctly with the particular chipset that they want to run it on, and so on. But they're making that shift. Why? Well, it goes back to the joke Pete made earlier. Money talks. They got a reason to do it, I'm quite sure. And so they did that. Are they being pushed so hard by their Nexus customers to do that? Not really. You know, are they being pushed so hard by their Catalyst customers to do that? You know, well, definitely much less so in that space, because there's less demand. But where the demand is, yes. Do they have to do this? Does Cisco have to do this? You know, and the question was switch vendors. Of course, we immediately start talking about Cisco because they're that 800-pound gorilla. I assume you were getting that, Ned. But you know, they don't have to in the near term. Might they eventually? So there's another issue here, which is how much are enterprises willing, particularly enterprises, willing to spend on their switch hardware? Hyperscalers and service providers don't want to have to spend a lot. They'll spend what they need to, but they're trying to drive those costs down, and they buy in bulk and they spend millions. Enterprises don't. They do a refresh once every 5 years, 7 years, it depends, and they're willing to fork out big bucks and have that thing sit there in the rack for another 5 years, 7 years. So are they driven by economics when they're used to that pattern? Do they really worry about the fact that they can do a white box play and put a NOS on it? In some cases they are. Andre, you guys are an example where that, you know, economics, I think, came into play for some of that decision. But the average enterprise, I don't think they're going to be forcing the hand of the big manufacturers to say, I want a white box answer, or I'm not going to bother running your NOS. I don't know that happens too much.
If I can do it like a strange analogy, we just had our house painted, and the painters did a great job. And you know what? When I have to get my house painted in 10 years or whatever, I'm going to call the same company because I know they did a good job the first time, and I don't really feel like spending the time and effort to bring in a whole bunch of different house painters and get references. Even if I could save myself, 25%, I'm probably not going to do it because I know these guys can do it and they did a good job. And that, I think, that sort of is the mentality that enterprises bring to a network refresh.
I mean, it sounds to me like. Sorry, I was going to say, it sounds to me like you need to run a house painter POC to just be sure.
Yeah, maybe.
Have multiple houses, have them all painted.
You paint this piece of siding, and you do this piece of siding, and we'll see which one looks better.
That's the only thing that makes sense here. I will say that what I've seen in the marketplace is every single major vendor, Cisco, Arista, Juniper, have all put a toe somewhere in the disaggregation, white boxy, open source space. Arista has container DOS, and it runs on Sonic. And if you look, there's only one customer in the world that runs Sonic, and it rhymes with Microsoft. So it's like, oh, I wonder why you're doing that. If you look at Cisco doing pseudo disaggregated XR, guess what? One of the world's largest service providers is talking about how they're doing all disaggregated white box networking for their service provider. Which is AT&T. That's been very public. And so I think you see these market forces more broadly. There's no long-term financial incentive for them to fully, swallow the hook there and do it, because they don't make any money if they're not being pressured. And so I think there's a chicken and the egg in which there's very little innovation in networking because all of the systems are closed. And so since there's no innovation, there's no motivation to make a change. So I think at some point, there's going to be a tipping point. I don't know when that is. Somebody's going to invent a thing. It's going to be amazing. Well, that's a routing protocol or a monitoring or a something. And everybody's going to go, oh my God, I want to be able to run this on my network. And then all of a sudden the dam will break. Where that is, if I knew, I would be a very wealthy VC.
I think there's a couple of aspects to this. My thoughts don't reflect those of my company necessarily. That for the average business or the average enterprise, there is a lot of value in being able to say, I bought this piece of hardware with 3 years worth of support. It will explode. You'll send me a replacement. I'll find a bug. Your 200 engineers will eventually fix it and ship me a patch. And that the cost of that is far lower than funding your own open source development team or support team to run your switch. Because back to my comment from earlier, most companies aren't paid to have a network. They have a network to serve the business. I think for the average business, the value is already paying off to them buying from a vendor because of things we've done like merchant silicon and trying to consolidate across a wide range of features into a common set of chips that now all of those vendors are developing or implementing versions on top of. I think there is certainly a place for a standard open source community supported Linux distribution that goes on everything. When I see something that's universally adopted, I will be a very happy man. I don't want to have to build it myself.
I have seen in my career that, in my enterprise career, that is, and the company I work for right now is a bit special in that way, so it doesn't quite apply. But enterprises tend to not plan ahead very well. And then basically, I want to buy the box that has every possible feature that I might need one day, and maybe some that I will never need.
Right.
Because a project will roll around and will come to me and say, I want to put this snowflake and this snowflake way in this data center, and then build layer 2 across 2 data centers, right? And I want the box that's already in the network that will permit me to do that by adding a few lines of code. Where, at least today, where Whitebox is and disaggregation is, I have a very limited set of basic features, and if I can make them work, then I win, right? And I probably reduce my TCO that way. But if I can't predict what I'm going to do tomorrow or a year from now, I'm going to buy every possible feature and probably license it while I have the budget, right? So that's what I've seen in my previous career, where like in Athena, we're kind of a little more basic across the network, and that's why we could make something like Whitebox work, and we just needed cheaper per port cost than, Snowflake network.